Wait, Shkreli, did you actually go to farm school? Or
No, I went
no?
to business school.
How'd you end up in pharma business?
I was a prodigy, and let's see, I knew everything about everything when I was about 18, and I liked science and medicine, especially.
Well, that was very interesting.
I've been studying medicine since I was.
What was your major?
Finance.
But people who go to the school of pharmacy, they don't understand pharmacy like Martin does as far as the investment part of it. Like, why do you keep saying, like, did you go to pharm school? I don't understand that.
I'm just curious about like how much he actually knows about the scientific and molecular pathways and stuff, more so than the business.
He knows a little bit. He's patented a few drugs. I'm pretty sure he was in on those studies.
Yeah, so medicine is pretty multidisciplinary. There's chemistry for medicinal chemistry. There's pharmacology. There's clinical science. So there's obviously medicine itself, which is its own field, being a physician.
Medicine isn't medicine mostly like memorization, like remembering.
Well, I'm just talking about like getting a medical degree, a medical doctor. So to be a pharmaceutical, to really understand pharma, you have to have so many different disciplines that there's no one degree that could really prepare you. And in fact, usually if you do have one degree, you get pretty boxed into that one degree.
I was gonna say, how do you think like someone in medical school could go about getting involved in pharma? Because
they can, but they usually are very confined. So like if you're a medical doctor, you can join the medical clinical part of a drug company, the part that runs clinical trials, the part that talks to physicians, the part that does all this stuff. But are you going to be the CEO? Probably not.
True.
Can you be a founder of a drug company? Probably not.
Does it matter like what specialty you go into in terms of medicine, of how you can interact with pharma?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you are a cardiologist, you might want to work at a company that has cardiology drugs, but it doesn't always, go one for one. It's sort of just something where you have to have so many different skills. I didn't even mention business, statistics, math. I mean, there's unending skills to do what I do. And the number one skill of all is humility and modesty, to know that I'm not the medicinal chemist that my guys like Dr. Thomas, Dr. Welsh, Dr. Brockman, my chemists, they're great medicinal chemists. I'm not. I never will be. That's necessarily humiliating. I'm never going to be the marketer that Nancy and Tina are, or salesperson that they are. I'm never going to be the doctor that Dr. Salinas is. You just have to be kind of understanding that, you have 1/10 of the skill set that these professionals do, and that you have to get around by maybe trying to go from 1/10 to 2/10. And that's really necessarily quite humbling.
What's the best way as a future doctor to deal with pharmaceutical representatives, pharmaceutical salesmen? Because I know that's always...
If you're a hardworking academic doctor, you're going to not pay attention to them. Yeah, just, understanding that you're not going to be the world's expert on really anything, and coping with that. Because I think in today's society, we're taught to specialize, We're taught to be that one, do one thing really, really well. And if you look at history, I think the great people of history actually did the opposite. If you look at Einstein, this is a guy who was never really a physicist or a mathematician. He was a patent clerk. But he still revolutionized both of those areas, really just physics, I guess. But, without formal study. And I think the reason we don't have Renaissance men anymore, like Descartes and like folks like that, is because, we're taught to say, don't study mathematics and 5 other things, just study mathematics.
For me, I want to be a surgeon, and I want to be the best surgeon I can be. So. Yeah. I have an easy path. Well, not easy, but...
Yeah, and the world needs great surgeons. There's no doubt about it.
What kind of surgeon do you plan on being?
I have a test on Wednesday, and the score on that will tell me what kind of surgeon I can be.
Go on orthopedics, man. That's where the money's at.
I'm actually leaning orthopedics.
What is that?
Repairing ACLs, torn shoulders, blown out joints.
Mostly hips and knees now, yeah.
Yeah, hips and
I
knees.
want to do, if I can, I want to do hands. I could either do ortho or plastics, then specialize in hand as a fellowship. But that's like the hardest. That's like the hardest residency to get into, and the hardest fellowship.
There have been a number of kind of thoughtful think pieces where they kind of take this balanced look at you and make the claim that, you know, perhaps you're doing something for the greater good by exposing what is kind of objectively a corrupt system.
Objectively a corrupt system?
Well, according to the article.
Okay, yeah.
I'm just curious kind of what your thoughts are on those pieces and whether you thought that they were accurate takes on what you're trying to do with your life, or they're just kind of alternative think pieces with no grounding in reality.
Yeah, I don't worry too much about writers. I don't think about what people write about me, and just because I participate in an article doesn't mean I'm interested in the writer's viewpoint that much.
So would you say that kind of by doing what you're doing now, you're just following your own self-interest, and to that extent, hoping that society gets better from it? Or would you say that you don't even think about your own actions in the broader context of what's good or not good for society?
Of course I think about that. I just know that I'm right, so I don't worry about the opinions of the less informed.
So when you say you're right, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
You know, I noticed that you talk a lot about that you're maybe a Trump supporter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of curious, do you think that by everyone following their own self-interests, or you following your own self-interests, society will tend to work itself out for the greater good?
No, I'm not necessarily following my own self-interest. You know, I could use the profits from 𝗟𝗏 to never do any research on toxoplasmosis, but I think drug makers have a little bit of a social contract that if they use profits wisely to benefit the patients that they're serving as a community, that drug companies can make money and those patients can benefit as well. The easiest thing in the world to do would be to not take that money and redeploy it in R&D, you know, but I just don't think it's ethical, and I think ethics do matter.
Do you think that the ethics should be regulated? Do you think that it's a weakness of a system where there is no... I think it's better for there to be, you know, companies have their own choice. They can not be ethical, and they'll be hurt in different ways, whether it's by, you know, there's people that may not want to work at, you know, companies that are not that ethical. If you jack up the price of medicine, you got to be prepared to say why you did it and what you're going to do with all that extra money. You know, something good, hopefully, for the people that, you know, are going to be paying for your drug, basically. You got to make sure that everyone can get it, and you got to make sure that if anyone in that community at all has any problems with healthcare, that you're there to fix them with your newfound cash. You know, I think that's reasonable. Now, if you don't do that, like I said, make morality and ethics a legal matter, but, you know, it'll hurt the company in other ways, and, you know, if it doesn't, then so be it. But, you know, we have other mechanisms in place to make sure runaway pricing can be curtailed. So to kind of pivot to your support of the right wing, is it just because you support less regulation in the free market? Or is it...
I support most of the policies. I support most of the policies of the right wing. I mean, I certainly identify with them more than I support the other team. Now, for some people, that's a party line, 100%, and I don't think that's rational. For some people, it's sort of a 51-49. You know, they're really torn between the two.
Yeah, are you getting ready to join the prison gang when you go to jail?
I'm not planning on going to jail or prison.
Well, how are you going to beat that? Look what they did to Bernie Madoff.
Bernie Madoff turned himself in. He was guilty. I think I admitted to a gigantic Ponzi scheme. I made money for my investors. My hedge fund tripled its returns for its investors. Bernie Madoff lost everyone their money.
Why did they say you ran a Ponzi scheme then?
Government says a lot of things. In fact, they accused Mark Cuban of insider trading, and he didn't insider trade. The government loves to take shots at brilliant geniuses like me. Not Cuban, just me. And because it makes them famous. Remember, prosecutors are people too. They're trying to get famous too. They're trying to advance their careers by prosecuting famous people. You think the people that put the cuffs on OJ, they wanted to be famous too? They got famous. It's part of the business. almost like show business.
Yeah, but they wouldn't just make that up.
Sure they would. Sure they would, dude. Sure they would. What do you mean? What do you mean they just wouldn't make that up? They made it up for Cuban.
If you go to jail, though, you're going to be in trouble, man. I mean...
No, So let's just take, for instance, in the extremely unlikely event that a jury finds me guilty. Are you familiar with how prison camp works? You sound like you've watched a lot of television. Prison camp... Please, shut up and let me finish. Prison camp for white-collar criminals, there's no fights, there's no shanks. You're confusing it with maximum security prison where murderers go.
Wouldn't you go to a federal prison, though?
Yeah, federal prison camp. State prison is what you want to avoid. Maximum security state and minimum security federal are two extremely different things. You can go Google it. In federal state prison camp, you play tennis. But for real, legal stuff is very interesting. I recommend that you study the law, study United States sentencing guidelines in particular, pretty interesting. I've sort of become a de facto lawyer in the last year. I've enjoyed it. Wouldn't wish it on anybody, but, some people voluntarily become lawyers, God forbid. But, it's an interesting world. I think that I'm going to win the case very easily. Let me move on.
When does the trial start? I want to follow it.
Trial is, trust me, you'll be following it whether you want to or not. It's
going to be big?
Yeah, it's going to be pretty big. June or July of next year.
All right, thanks, Lawrence. Have a nice night.
Thanks, you too, bro. I've had this HARAMBE hat before HARAMBE died.
Let's talk about climate change.
Climate change, okay. Go ahead.
First off, I think it's 100% BS, and climate change is absolutely not real at all.
Okay.
I also think that global warming is real, and so I can support that.
Let me give you my opinions on this, okay?
Okay.
So the first thing I'd say is I'm not a climate scientist. I'm not a meteorologist. I'm not a climatologist. I've never studied physical sciences. I know chemistry. I know biology. I know a lot about those areas. I know an incredible amount about those areas. But, and so therefore I can respect the science that goes into those areas, right? So I know from a scientific perspective how the world works in terms of sort of hypothesis testing and generation and publishing your research, etc. I think the following. This country has bigger problems than climate change. We are a small part of the world. Climate change, whether it's real or not, and personally I think it's real. But again, I'm not a climatologist. I'm not a scientist. My opinion and your opinion doesn't matter. We are not, brilliant climate scientists. We haven't published 500 times in Nature. We haven't published 500 times. I don't have a Nature paper. You don't have a Nature paper. And let the experts in the area be experts in the area. And let them make up their minds. Because it's not about you or me and our feelings. Our feelings don't matter. It's a fact. It's what I'm saying by that is it's a fact that you can test. It's falsifiable in logical terms. You have to be able to test the hypothesis, generate evidence, keep looking at it, and scrutinize it from a scientific perspective. Emotions have nothing to do with science. And you can feel one way about climate change. You can feel one way about the environment. You can feel one way about global warming, but it doesn't make a difference how you feel. And the government should try in its best nonpartisan way to engage in that scientific study. And sometimes they fail, and we feel like issues that should be scientific are politicized. But with respect to the environment, here's what I'll say that's a little, maybe give you some meat on the bones and be a little controversial, is the country has quite a lot of net debt. Our debt surpasses our assets, in my opinion, by a large amount. I've talked to some Washington insiders who actually feel that our assets are often underrepresented. We look at the $19 trillion in debt. We don't think about all these assets that we have, including our land, which is extremely valuable. Now, I would argue we can't just sell our land. Maybe we could sell California to somebody, but joking, of course, but we have a big problem in our country with respect to spending, taxes, debt. We have a structural issue that is enormous. And in my opinion, we should correct that issue first. And with respect to the environment, it is a distant, laughable second in importance to making sure this country doesn't go the way of Venezuela, making sure this country doesn't go the way of the USSR. We have so much debt, and it's absurd if you think about it. If you had a business that was losing money every year and piled on $19 trillion of debt, and you said, this is the most solvent business on the face of the earth, and that's what the markets treat the United States as the most solvent, secure. Our debt is the most solvent and secure investment possible. To me, that makes no sense. So we have to cut our spending, and unfortunately that might mean cutting spending to climate change and things like that. Private industry and academics can study climate change. They can make recommendations to our government. Hopefully we can enact some of those recommendations to reduce the impact of climate change. But to me, our problem doesn't lie in climate change. It's not the government's problem. The Earth is going to be very resilient, in my opinion. Even if there's climate change, the Earth is extremely resilient. Our species is extremely resilient. I think we can do things to reverse that climate change down the road. Our focus should be on reducing our debt, reducing our spending, finding a form of government that doesn't require this ridiculously sprawling large government that is crushing us. As non-scientists, especially non-climate scientists, we should just sort of be reserved. And I think the media should do that too. You know, they should be, like you're saying, more even-handed, etc. I gotta move on, man. Thanks for your call.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
Hey, what's your opinion on the current state of antidepressants? And, like, do you have any experience taking them?
Yeah, I've been taking an anti-anxiety drug for anxiety since I was 17, and it works really well for me. I used to have panic attacks. I don't have panic attacks anymore. As you may know, depression drugs are also approved for anxiety. You know, they're modestly effective. Sometimes for people they're remarkably effective, as in my case, but they're often not effective at all. So Turing actually is working on a drug called ketamine, as is Johnson & Johnson. And I think the field of depression will hopefully change pretty dramatically soon, but, you know, we'll see.
Yeah, so you agree, like, there's a market for novel antidepressants?
I don't think anyone doesn't think that. I think that what pharma companies are very nervous about developing a drug when they don't know how depression works, and there's very little biology to guide the way. You know, usually in cancer you can point to an enzyme or a protein and say, we got to stop that guy, and you make a drug, it stops that guy in petri dish, it stops that guy in mice, it stops that guy in the first human, and then you do more humans and you get approval and you're happy. And of course things go wrong along the way, but that's sort of how it works. In CNS disorders, not just depression, but other diseases like schizophrenia and autism, there's almost no way to kind of navigate, you know, what's actually happening in the brain and what enzyme you have to target. You basically have to guess. And
yeah, it's more of an enigma than cancer even.
Much more. Yeah, much more. And, you know, so we'll see what happens, but, you know, I think that there are some opportunities out there. Anyway, I got to keep it going.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah.
Hi, I was told that you were giving away a car on the internet.
Did you just call me like 100 times? Are you psychotic?
I'm sorry if I'm bothering you, but...
No, it's not that you're bothering me. Like, I just trying to get into just trying to understand, like, humans in general, because a lot of people think I'm, like, very apathetic and narcissistic. Why would you call someone, like, 5 times in a row?
Oh, no, because, like, my friend told me that, he saw an ad on Craigslist where you were giving away a car or something. Like, I'm sorry if I'm bothering you, like, or anything. Like, I don't mean to inconvenience you or anything.
You have a driver's license?
Yes, I have a driver's license.
Where do you live?
I live in Texas.
Why do you have a New York phone number?
I've kept the New York phone number even though I moved to Texas. But I go to school in New York, but my family's in Texas.
Yeah, where do you go to school?
I go to St. John's University.
Uh-huh. And you need a car.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it would help.
It would help?
Yeah, like, actually, I mean, to be honest, I was planning on, like, just selling the car so I can use it for my textbooks and stuff like that. That was it, but...
Amazing. You're like the worst kind of person that ever lived.
I'm sorry.
Why don't you get a job?
I do have a job, but it's not really enough to cover tuition and everything. But
get a better job. Get a second job.
Okay, I will try that again. I mean, I just thought I'd try to call anyway. Yeah, I'm sorry.
You wanted me to give you a free car so you could sell it
To buy other... I hope you fail out of school.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Didn't mean to offend you or anything.
Now go work. Go work. Go. Go.
Okay.
Go.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Go. Go. Right now, go. Go to work. I hope you're doing like push-ups at least.
Where would you say you get your worth ethic?
Bored.
Yes, I don't know, man. It's psychological fear of something or other.
What, a failure?
Yeah, it's typically where people get it. Inferiority complex.
Right? Like, the whole thing, you don't want to do nothing with your life, so like...
That's even more poetic and ambitious. I think for most people, they don't want to be... they don't want to feel inferior to others. They have to feel superior to others. They have psychological... Overachievers are not well adjusted. That's like arguably an excuse. One shouldn't achieve more than one has to.
They don't want to be a nobody.
Yeah, it's a fear more than it is anything else, which is sad. I think most billionaires are psychopathic.
Is it true the banking industry is a high case of brain damage, people?
I don't know about that, but I think that there are people who are really rich and not crazy. I think like Mark Zuckerberg is a good example, where they made money so quickly that they kind of couldn't help it. And then there are people like Charlie Munger or Warren Buffett who are not psychopaths, but just kind of love, for whatever reason, the game of making money. But most of the other people are pretty crazy.
But I've heard the lifestyle really changes the brain matter.
I'm sure it does. I don't know.
The stressful lifestyle,
jumping
out of buildings and whatever, I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, I think my brain's got some issues from the constant stress, absolutely.
No, wait, so would you say people that just make money to make money are more crazy than people that make money just for fun?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think they're often, one person who would know, who I can't name, told me that he tried to hire orphans, because orphans are always the people who had the most kind of to prove, because they weren't loved as kids, and that they always needed validation, and they sought that validation in material things, whether it be money or achievements, and that